evening or good afternoon, everybody. It's definitely afternoon. Good afternoon. Welcome to another episode of Creative Perceptions, where your visions meet your reality. Today, on the fourth episode, I have a very, very special guest, Tasha Wilson, who is from the Eastern Shore of Maryland. She's my sister. She's one of my good friends, and she's an A&Q. She's an entrepreneur. She's an author. She's an advocate. She does everything. So welcome on the show, Tasha. How you feeling?
Great. I'm so happy to be able to have a conversation with my brother. So I'm really excited.
Oh, we're good. We're glad to have you. So, real quick before we get into the interview, tell people about yourself.
All right. Well, in a nutshell, I always tell everybody what you see is what you get with me. There's a lot of things that I do, but ultimately, who I am as a person is just to bring love, light, inspiration in whatever space I operate in.
Okay. So, it's to my understanding, I believe education is very important. So, let the people know, your background, educational background, and how this helps you with your goals that we're going to talk about today.
Sure. So, I am a 2 times master's student. I had a master's in social work degree from the illustrious Morgan State University. I also have a master's degree in education from Towson University and a bachelor's of human ecology degree at the University of Maryland, Eastern Shore.
Awesome. That is definitely a lot of school, and I know you're going to use that background very well. So to kind of get off started, so I know you're very writing is very important to you, and it's a very important aspect to you, and you're an author. So tell me first and foremost, from your childhood to now, did you see yourself being an author, and what's it like that you published multiple books?
So I absolutely did not think that I was going to be an author. I actually really didn't get into the habit of writing consistently until high school. And so the caveat is at the age of 16, my father, he passed away from an explosion on his job. And so I was just basically placed in a grief group, not knowing that I was placed in the grief group until I got there. And so being unfamiliar, always being very introverted and not saying much, I didn't say anything at all. And so basically they gave me a pen and paper to try to create that outlet. And so that's where writing really became a part of my life. And so with that, I really didn't understand what would come out of it. Honestly, it was just a way for me to really express in detail how I was feeling in that moment, because it was my only trusted source. And it's like, oh, if it's in a book, no one will open it, no one will look at it, because I took it with me wherever I went. But then after a while, as time progressed, the question was, what happens to the writing once it's done?
Right.
Is it just to serve you, or is it a way for you to connect with other people? So
Great.
That's how that kind of happened.
Wow. Well, I commend you for utilizing that talent to help others. And I know it's definitely going to pay off with you, especially with all this time we have to read.
Hey.
So, right. So my first question, I mean, you kind of already alluded to the passing of your father. So it kind of takes us back, I guess, to the back road of navigation. So what stood out about your childhood, good or bad? And how did you use that because one thing, I noticed that you are a counselor or / social work by nature. I mean, you have the background from an educational standpoint, but a lot of people, when they choose those occupations, it stems from, something that may have happened in their childhood that motivated them or inspired them, or just, sometimes you just know that you have that gift. So what's something that stood out about your childhood, whether it's good or bad, and how did you use it to fuel you today?
Sure. So I could take it from multiple lens, but I'll use this one in particular. Like, I noticed that in my family dynamic, from, to my mom's upbringing, my dad's upbringing, until, them two coming together and raising my brother and I, coming from a 2-parent household wasn't as common. If you look at the whole totality of my family history, and then having parents that were married, just wasn't a thing. And so in our household, I noticed that one thing that my parents try to change the narrative is communication. And so outside of our household, we didn't get a lot of communication. So there were a lot of family things that we didn't know about, a lot of secrets, what they say, what goes on in this house stays in this house. And so, but I noticed that when things were always in disarray, I was always the one that kind of remained calm. I was always the one that was gather community. And I was always the one that tries to get into the bottom line. Like, what is the root of something? Why are we
Right.
this way? I always was concerned with the behaviors and what was the
That's
root.
very important.
And so I knew then as a child, I was very intuitive and very observant. And I didn't know exactly why I was so concerned with someone's well-being until it had a name to it. And I was like, oh,
Right.
social work, right? And so as funny as this sounds, even though I am extremely introverted and I love my own space, I am a relator. I know how to connect to people very well.
Right.
I know what to listen for when they say things. I know how their body may respond to certain questions. And so that's just always something that kind of drew me in.
Gotcha. Okay, good. So my next question, being as such, relations is very important today, and oftentimes we kind of take advantage of the way to connect to people. Why, for your target audience, I noticed, your purpose. I know you have your royalty defined, which you are the founder and CEO of, and you're a part of RAIN, which we'll talk about later. Why millennials?
Because oftentimes I believe that millennials are very unorthodox, and they're always there's always this misconception of who we are. Sometimes I feel like we're often placed in categories or boxes where we're not really given the fully operational space to be who we are unapologetically. And so for me, I've always been considered like the underdog. I've always been considered the outcast. And so knowing how I felt in my personal experience, I wanted to really form that sense of solidarity among the other millennials. Like, okay, the way that you may present this message one way, or the way you may respond to something, doesn't mean that there's anything wrong with you. That's just how you process information and how you present it. And so really trying to sharpen who they are in a positive light versus what everyone else may kind of rule us out as.
Okay. I mean, I love that. I think sometimes it's kind of difficult because there are different ranges as far as age as the millennials. So sometimes we all as millennials get chalked into one box. But I think it's very interesting because you talked about, how things used to be as far as parenting, and there are certain, like, you better eat all the food off your plate, or certain methods that were used that may not, for the younger millennials nowadays, that's not going to fly. You have to explain things.
Yes.
So what are some of the challenges that you face as first off, a young Black woman? What are some of the challenges you face in that realm? Because that has to be a lot, and then the field it can be very draining, right? Sure.
Yes. So there's always this element of surprise. I think a lot of times people kind of target me as the young Black woman just for the diversity component, but then they don't really understand the wealth of knowledge that I do have. And so even though they may see it on paper, it's kind of like, does she really present or match to what is listed on her credentials? And I think sometimes there's that challenge of wanting to be heard more so than wanting to be seen. It's like, I know what I look like. I know who I am because I see that in the mirror every day. And so I don't need you to have microaggressions to remind me of that. And so oftentimes there's this misconstrued notion of having to walk around on eggshells, because once they identify you as a young Black woman, they think you're an angry Black woman, and that's not always the case. And so those are typically the challenge. And then also being able to operate in spaces where my clients are able to identify with me.
Right.
I have clients who may have like one small component that we're able to connect with, but outside of that, they kind of look at it like, I know who you are, I know what your purpose to do, but all I see is a young Black woman. And so that makes it hard for me to kind of reach to them the way that I know that I'm able to.
And that has to be frustrating because my mother, she was in the military and she was a commander, a nurse. And she reached the commander ranks, and I kind of watched her navigate that, how some people didn't really necessarily respect her as a peer, whether it was her counterpart as another woman. How do you guys keep how do you keep the positivity with that? And like I said, the stressors of the job, like, how do you keep the negative energy or the negative spirits, whatever you want to say? How do you keep afloat? That has to be tough.
Oh, yes. It has been trial and error. I will say that there have been times where I would get really defensive and want to react or respond on how I've been like mistreated or devalued. But then after a while, I had to really look at the bigger picture and say, Tasha, you're here for a reason. You're here because you are called to be here. And so while you're here, you need to do what you need to do to make it work. No matter where I place you, and I have a relationship with God, so it's like no matter where he places me, there's going to be people who agree, there's going to be people who disagree, there's always going to be a complaint out there, but am I going to allow the complaining to dictate how I move, or I'm just going to remember who I am in spite of? And so what I do, I counteract what I'm hearing or what I'm seeing, and or even by what people are doing. And I just remind myself, like, Tasha, you're here. Tasha, you have purpose. Tasha, there's a reason why you're called to operate in this space right now. What lessons are you trying to learn from this? And what value can you bring to the table?
Nice. Nice. I commend you for that, because it's definitely needed. And then obviously this is an attachment of your purpose, because your alias, or what people refer to you as or see you as, is the messenger of hope. So one, tell me about that, and then two, let's talk about Royalty Defined. So break down the name, and then tell me how Royalty Defined came apart.
So the messenger of hope, I always am a firm believer that the area that you're most challenged with is the very area that you are purposed for. And so throughout my life, people would be surprised for the amount of trauma and pain that I've actually personally endured, because a lot of things that I've encountered, people would not imagine me to be joyful. People would not imagine me to even want to connect with people, or even want to have people in my space, or even trust people or be vulnerable. And so I truly believe, as a messenger of hope, it just really allows me to just be, allows me to just show up in spaces, allows me to give people that inspiration or that unction of happiness that they may be looking for in that moment. And then even just a reminder to say, you know what, it's going to be okay. You may not understand it now, but it's going to be okay. Because my favorite scripture is Romans 8:28. Knowing that all things work together for your good. And so it's like, no matter what's going on, no matter what season or dimension you're in, all those puzzle pieces create a bigger picture of why you're here, what keeps you grounded. And so being the messenger of hope, I do just that. I make sure that, what I say is, aligns with how I act, how I behave. I always tell people that I'm a blank canvas, I'm an open book. And so I never shy away from my mishaps, my misfortunes, or anything like that. I always tell people, I had to learn the hard way. So to prevent you from following down that same path, let me extend the olive branch and help you. So
I think that's very important, because we kind of live in a society with instant gratification, and then we lost the true essence of mentorship and love, and really taking people under the wing. So I definitely commend you for that. And to be honest, sometimes as a journalist, as an aspiring media professional, sometimes I have to remind myself, like, I'm a very team oriented person, that it's not always about you necessarily, and you have to bring people up with you, because you never know who could be in that boss chair when they turn around. And you're like, oh, okay, hey. But no,
right.
it's a scary thing, but I definitely commend you on that. So talk to me about Royalty Defined. Tell us what it is, and how you got the vision. Like, walk me through the process.
So it definitely wasn't something that happened overnight. I'm one of those, I tell everyone who knows me, and you know this, that my mind is like computer tabs, browsers, multiple. They open up all the time. It's always thinking, it's always working, it's constantly on, that it takes a while for me to like shut it down. And so this was like maybe 2014, 2013 roundabout. God was like really speaking through me during a transition in my life. I was getting out of a relationship. I've always been in relationships where, they were the shortest one lasting like 3 years. And so I didn't know how to operate as Tasha without being attached to someone, if that makes sense. And so honestly, in that transition, I really learned that I didn't fully know who I was. It was one of those things where people would say, well, who are you? And I'm kind of like, I don't know. And that's like, you've been operating and you've been on this earth for how long and you don't know. That was problematic for me and it bothered me. And so I was just like, okay. And so basically the refining part from Royalty Refined came from the polishing, the chiseling of, taking away who I thought I was supposed to be, taking away myself from the expectations that other people had of me, and really allowing myself to be yielded in a willing vessel for God to show me. And so, really being in stillness, really listening from him, and just really being exposed to the things that I had hidden and the things that I never addressed. And so I'm like, wow, even though this refinement process is uncomfortable, but once I saw myself blossom out of that, it was so rewarding. And then also understanding that even through the refinement process, it never changed the value of being royalty. I've always been chosen. I've always been called, and I've always been his. And so even though there were moments where I may not have liked myself, or there were moments where I was embarrassed of, God's like, please, okay, like let's just be clear, like none of these are mistakes. This is just making up the DNA of who I had formed you from the beginning. You lost sight of that because of experiences, but I'm going to remind you of who you are. And so that's where Royalty Refined came out of. It was really birthed from my experience of, okay, now that you're teaching me and you're showing me these things, now how can I help everyone else? How can I help
watch them work?
Feel it, right? And so always knowing that what happened to me wasn't just for me. Like what he was doing through me was for other people. So that's how that came about. Officially got his name in 2015.
Okay. So for those, I know you do a lot of panels. I know you do a lot of informational. I know you do a lot. You guys do a lot. So run down really quickly. What do you guys, because I know you have a team. I know you're the CEO and the founder, but I know you're very team oriented and like you're very purposeful. You think smart, not hard. So tell me what you all do.
Okay, so throughout the year, we actually have like 2 major events, is what I call public events, because a lot of the things that we do are behind the scenes. And so for the 2 major events, in March, we have this something more intimate. It's called the Royalty, but it's TEA, play on the words, entrepreneur mixer. And so what that really is, we'll get like a keynote speaker, and they'll come in and they'll talk about the different hats that women juggle, and how we can always recenter ourselves and make sure that we rebalance everything that we're juggling and never take away from who we are. Like once those things moved, what's left. And so we come together. It's a great way for us to like network with other entrepreneurs, for them to showcase what they have going on. It'll be like a marketplace and stuff set up, and just really that engaging conversation, because oftentimes women are so divided. It's just a way for us to really come together and work collaboratively. In September is our bigger event, and it's the Newfound Dream and Worth Conference, short for, AKA also known as NEW conference. But really it focuses on the target areas that people are kind of afraid to discuss openly. And so this year the theme is Radically Royal, and that just really stems from really following your process, understanding your process, and not getting caught up to what society is trying to push on you. And
Thank you. Say that again. Say that again, please. Lord.
Respecting your process, honoring your process, and don't get caught up on what society tries to push onto you. And so a lot of us, especially I noticed as a Black woman, there's always this timeline that other people try to create when it comes to marriage, when it comes to motherhood, when it comes to your career job, and different things like that, even when it comes to the stigma of mental health. And so we're basically canceling all of those myth busters at this Radically Royal, and really understanding that the panelists that are there, they each have a different journey, but it all comes to the same purpose of this path had to be created for me because of this reason. So, yeah.
I agree, because I find myself like the older I get, like not to knock marriage, like that is the goal at one day. But then also I just feel like where I'm at right now, for me personally, like I'm trying to transition into journalism. I feel like I'm doing a disservice to somebody else if I'm not where I'm supposed to be and doing what I'm supposed to do, but I'm trying to do that. That can cause burnout. And then also, there's no need to rush. Like, you don't want to rush something and then it's not right. So I appreciate you for saying that, because, again, there's nothing wrong with marriage. It's a beautiful union, but it's a serious thing. And I feel like someone once said we made it more of a social thing instead of a sacred thing.
Yeah,
So
that's so true.
right. So it just it's mind boggling. But thank you for expressing that and explaining that. So now we're gonna move to the second part of the interview. This is the fun part. Well, the first part is fun, but this is like kind of like, ooh, see what the brain is doing. So the second section is called Quick Strike. It's kind of like Foot Locker when you get a special sneaker in, but you only get 10. You got to get them out while you can, right?
Okay.
So quick answer, and it's gonna be. I'm gonna ask the question. You just give a quick answer. It will catch you off guard. Some of them may not. All right. So is the local church dead? Is the local church going to be dead after COVID-19? The traditional values of a church, because you kind of see, like, again, we talk about millennials, but then now with COVID, everything has to go virtual. So will that help it or will that hurt it?
Mm. I'm gonna be optimistic. I'm gonna say.
Okay.
I say help it. Help.
Okay. So with the COVID-19 going on, George Floyd, Black Lives Matter, you kind of see the lines in which people of faith, sometimes it's easy to say we believe in X, Y, and Z, but then when controversy happens, you really get to see the character of a person. So why do you think it is people leave, people of the strong faith, and again, there's no judgment, we all fall short, but why do you think it is that when controversy happens, like, you see people split? Some people are for, like, yes, everybody needs to be equal and free, but then some people are like, no, there's nothing wrong with what's going on. Why do you think that is, no matter what the race is?
I think it's a lack of knowledge. I also think it's a lack of what's presented in front of them. So it could be a lack of experience. And I also, a lot of it is selfishness.
That is real. Oh gosh. Okay. So good question. Why do you think we've become more divisive as a society instead of inclusive? I mean, because at the end of the day, we need everybody. And that's just across the board. Because I've noticed that it's like we've lost the time where you can agree to disagree. You have to be on one side. Why do you think that is?
I think a lot of people think that being the loudest voice in the room means that you have power and control, and when actually it shows how insecure you may really be. Because a lot of times when there's a disagreement, that means that you're being challenged in some way that may make you feel uncomfortable. And so with the challenge, we have to learn how to really address that in a fruitful way and in a productive way. So I think that's really what it is. Everyone wants to be heard, but no one's actively listening.
I agree. All right, good. Random. Chick-fil-A or Chipotle?
Oh God, this is so hard. I like them both. I'm gonna go with Chick-fil-A.
Okay, all right. Good answer. I mean, I wouldn't have been mad at either one. All right, so for the last section, it's gonna be all caps or no caps. All caps meaning a lie, no caps meaning it's the truth.
Oh boy.
So, all caps or no caps, do you think we're gonna return back to normal by the end of 2021?
No.
Okay, so all caps. All right. No, I'm about to say this is really it's interesting that this is really becoming our new norm. All right. Will we receive another book from Tasha Wilson by 2021?
Yes.
Okay. All right. Royalty Defined is going to go international in the next 5 years.
Oh, absolutely, yes.
Yes. All right. Good. All right. So I always like to end this, like, in the interview with one, what is God teaching you? And then the second follow-up to that would be, for any person that's walking in your shoes that may want to be a social worker, a therapist, or somebody that promotes change from a social perspective or a mental perspective, what is your advice as a young Black woman? Because oftentimes, a lot, Black women are disregarded, and they're not treated equally at all, because it's like, you think about it, structurally it's really white man, Black man, mixed in between other types of ethnicities, and then the Black woman. So what would be your advice? Because we all have to stick together, and I know we as Black men have to do better, but what would be your advice to an up and coming young Black professional in social work or counseling?
Okay, so first part, God is really showing me intentionality and patience. Yeah.
That's good.
And then But I would encourage other Black women who really want to get into the mental health profession to really understand that in that profession, it's not about you at all. And so we have to have the heart to serve. And so if you are an individual who's more so concerned with the accolades and the recognition, then it may not be the field that you want to dive into, because there are a lot of things that you will see that you may not like or you may not agree with, but you have to be in there from an unbiased perspective and really understand that your role is to really empower the other person to apply critical thinking skills and to really address what's going on. It's not the way for you to put your personal beliefs or practices on them. You're really cultivating and shifting their mindset and their perspective to view things from a different lens.
That's outstanding. Where can the people find you at?
Oh my. So listen, if you really want to be, all into my world, I am on Instagram, and my Instagram name is Life with Tasha W _ and the name speaks for itself. You can also go to my website, www.tashaw.net. You can see what I'm actually doing throughout the year, where you can see like future appearances, events, and even check out my merchandise that I have available. So you can access my online store through that. And my books, if you want to read there, it's also all there. And clarity consultations, I give them out to people who may want to, write a book, or who may have an idea to build a brand. I would be your person. A lot of people usually want to come to me for different things, but it does come with the cost. Please know that
say that.
The weight of my process and journey is not light to carry. So therefore, it comes with the cost. But I promise you, if you really want to invest in yourself, you'll do it. So.
All right, there you have it. Thank you, Tasha. I love you. Thank you for hopping on this show. Please follow her on all of those handles that she mentioned, and please go by. Supporting Black-owned businesses is more than just promoting on Twitter and Facebook and Instagram, Pinterest, whatever you use. It also comes with a cost. Please pay. We understand it's hard times of COVID, but we thank you, Tasha, and we love you.
All right, thank you.
Peace.
Peace.
You were with me.